Welcome back to another episode here on the Heart and Hustle podcast. Miss Molly, you a first gen. You talked about being a low income student and
Mhm.
college felt completely out of reach, but the right people created a pathway for you. What did that feel like when someone finally built a door where there wasn't one?
That is such a good question. I think I was really thinking about this from my, life journey and really thinking about the pivotal moments that I think we can really kind of call upon. And the one that really came
Hmm.
to my mind is actually really connected to the fact that I was low income. The college that I ended up going with was actually the school that got me a job as part of the admissions process. So my admissions counselor had gone to the school and knew someone that worked in the dining center. And so I just had shared, like, I'm just so nervous about how I'll pay for this. And she shared,
Hmm.
oh, actually, I know some people, I can set you up with a position. And I was like, well, that makes it feel attainable and that I'll have like a landing when I get there and somewhere I can make sure I have enough money. Now, recognizing as now looking back, a student employment job does not give you enough money to pay for college, but at the time it made me feel like I think seen, right? She understood sort of really my big hangups were feeling comfortable and like I could navigate the system. And that employment position actually was a game changer for me.
I always love a story with someone was probably didn't know what the next chapter of their life would look like,
Hmm.
but because of somebody else, I always say that one moment, one person, one story changes somebody's life it was
Absolutely.
changed because of the one moment, right? That
Yeah.
we could always kind of go back to.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. I also love that you said something in our first conversation that really stuck with me because I didn't think about it until you said it, which was people who have deep stories usually learn substance early because they had to. Can
Hmm.
you kind of unpack that? Because I think that that's one of the most important things that I've heard in a long time. And as I mentioned, I've really started to think like maybe that's why I love systems. Like systems is my video game.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you bringing that up. It's something that's really sat with me for a while now too, really thinking about. So I moved out of my house when I was 15 and I moved in with other family because that's what made sense for me at the time. And then I even think about my childhood before I moved out and just recognizing that it was my job to pay attention to people, how they were feeling, what they were doing, what was going on. And then that was true at school, right? Because school was a place that I had a safe space and realizing that I wanted to keep that. So then if I was high achieving, if I met the teacher's goals and needs, then I was kind of continued to be likable and in favor. And those were safety measures for me, right? Like my body didn't feel
Yeah.
safe unless I was paying attention and hyper aroused, honestly, hyper aware of what was going on around me. But that taught my body to learn patterns and systems and people. And so then, yeah, when I started college, it was interesting. I shared the story about how I ended up in college. I applied to three places. And I even think back now, one of the places lost my application. And I thought, well, I don't want to go somewhere that can't keep track of my application. That feels important. And
Yeah.
now I'm like, that's because it didn't feel like a good system, right? The place I picked was the place where like, we can get you a job. We're going to help, create the pathway for you to find some success right away. Again, a good system. So yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about our bodies really learn and are constantly mapping for safety, and that mapping for safety, especially when it has to happen a lot when we're young, helps us recognize that, okay, well, there's other maps I can create, right? And our bodies do that. And if we can slow down and listen to our bodies and pay attention to those signals, that makes a big difference in understanding systems. Because so often I think we are in systems that don't feel good and we just
Yeah.
power through and we just kind of maybe ignore
Yeah.
as some of the people I worked with or know, they just sort of maybe ignore those signals because they're like, I just need this job or I just need this. And some of the work I do is encouraging people to slow down and really understand the system. But I think those of us that have lived a different style of life or a different kind of upbringing maybe have had the chance to recognize those signals more.
And you said you're helping people build systems or
Mhm.
understand systems now. Is that what you're doing?
Yeah. Yeah, so I recently did an interview with someone who worked at in a hospital system, and she shared with me
Hmm.
that her department is under HR, and their whole job is change management, organizational leadership, helping with training, professional development, and onboarding. But I've actually only ever worked at small institutions who that wasn't on the radar. That's not an option when I think you have a smaller budget, you have a smaller organization, you aren't doing so much of that that you can justify a whole department. So yeah, so the work that people hire me to do is come in, do interviews, understand their culture, help them understand their culture, map the people and the systems, policies, practices that are impacting them in ways they maybe don't realize. So I start to ask and understand about patterns that are showing up that they don't like. And often there's feedback there that they're not aware of, and or they're aware
Yeah.
of, but they don't know how to track, as an example. So yeah, so the work that people and want, pay me to do is come in and really help them understand kind of what's going on, map it out for them, and give them a roadmap of what could be next to see the growth or the change that they want.
And how does little Molly feel knowing that, something that she probably didn't understand at the moment, she is now actually teaching others? Like,
Yeah.
I can only imagine the little you is smiling ear to ear.
Yeah, I love that you said that. That's so meaningful. Yeah, there's a quote out there on social media that I've seen on and off is that, be proud that you're an adult that your younger self would have felt safe with and loved
Yeah.
from. And I'm like,
Oh, that's good.
right? Chills, gives you the
Yeah,
goosebumps.
yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I ain't gonna lie to you. I just mentioned before we hit record that I went to WrestleMania, and that's exactly what I was a young kid that was going through life, and
Hmm.
wrestling was the escape from reality. And I
Yeah.
would remember as a young kid, like, man, one day I'm going to be, working with wrestling, and 3 years ago, I'd like to jokingly say that I came out the wrestling closet and start telling people that I love wrestling. But
Hmm.
this year, I decided to go do media coverage. And as I was on that plane going to Vegas, really believing in myself, investing in
Hmm.
myself, I sat here and really kind of just tear up because I'm like, man, the little me would be so damn happy that you
Yeah.
chase your dream, right?
Yeah.
Like, and we go through struggles in our lives, Molly, and you kind of, touched a little bit of it. So, and there's not a lot of people that see the other side, Molly. So,
Hmm.
for us to be here and have these conversations, like, damn,
Absolutely.
and sometimes it's also so easy to beat ourselves up. Sometimes
Hmm.
I had to remember. I remember
Yeah.
one time beat myself up so bad. Then the first person that I spoke to that morning was somebody from an adoption home, and it
Hmm.
took me back of where I started. I'm like, why am I so upset? Look how far I've come.
Hmm.
And some people don't realize that at times because they are in the system.
Right.
You know, they can't see past the moment. They can't see past the hurt or whatever it is.
Right.
So I love that. Did you have a story that maybe you've helped somebody built that system that really changed their trajectory, whether it's an individual or a business?
Yeah, I think what's an amazing part of working in education is that it's the good and the bad, right? You do a lot of work early on to really plant a lot of seeds and you hope for the best for people. I am someone who shares my story of being a low income student. And in college, there's a lot of stigma around that. There's a lot of challenges. I'm also someone who shares my story of coming from a tumultuous home, a single parent home, a home with a lot of big emotions that weren't navigated. I share that story when it's appropriate with my students to help them see that even though that they may have come from challenging situations, other
Mhm.
people in this space have gone through that and have got onto the other side. And yeah, just actually a couple weeks ago, someone emailed me and I hadn't spoken to her in probably 10 years. She was my student and she was a student who I connected with, but we didn't work super closely together, just someone
Mhm.
that I helped along the way. And she was actually came into my institution at a time that I had built a strong leadership system. We had a really good plan, really good onboarding, really good training, really good continued development for those students. So it didn't feel like a lot of work to me because of the system. But she emailed me and said, the way that you handled and the way that you navigated leadership was a game changer for me. Like I'd never seen a woman in a leadership position in the way you navigated that. And I had never been poured into in the way that you poured into me, as a human and as a person. And I never, and the way that she described feeling seen and heard and valued and developed in that space was just amazing to me. And so such a great opportunity because again, I was part of a larger team that did that. And we built this system to help those students. My research, so I have my doctorate in educational leadership. And my research is about how if we focus on people's strengths and the assets that they bring to the table, especially first generation college students, but people in general, every one of us has a unique gifts, really.
Mhm.
If we focus
Yep.
on those strengths and not on the deficits or the things that they maybe have been challenged by that mistakes they've made, then that can make the difference in if they're able to develop as a leader and then use that leadership skill in their future life. So my research was on first generation college women who are now in leadership positions, and did the way that their college experience see them and show them leadership skills from a strengths-based lens, did that make a difference for them? And the answer is yeah, it did, which I knew, right?
I
Intuitively, I
love
knew,
it.
I experienced it. There was those times in college where people and on into my career where people saw me as a person with gifts and strengths. And there were other times where people underestimated me. And, those different experiences were very different. And it developed me in different ways.
I love it. I want to go back because you just kind of like threw it in there that you have a doctorate degree. Kudos to you. Let's go. Hell
Thanks
yeah.
so much.
But the other thing I want to really ask is because I don't know that I knew this until later on in my life.
Sure.
When did you find out that you were a leader?
Oh yeah, that's such a good question. I think when I was young, I was just considered bossy. Like other kids didn't love me because I was like, listen, we should be doing. Um, and I also am an external processor, and so people I think always perceived me to be this extrovert, and I'm like, no, brain, thoughts just don't happen inside; they just come out of my mouth.
Yeah, yep, yep.
And I also actually recently found out I have ADHD, which presents differently for girls. So my son, who I also think has ADHD, he's not diagnosed yet. His presents as like jumping up and down on the ground physically, like. But I think for me, it's like my brain works so fast that people often don't know how to keep up with me. I've had
Yeah.
coworkers say, "You're just talking so fast. I don't understand what you're saying." And I was like, "Good, thanks for the feedback. I'll slow down." But
It's
I
so,
do think that actually had an impact. The way my brain works differently. All of those things were never, again, those seen as assets, right? They weren't necessarily things that
yeah,
people in general were like, oh, this is a strength. They called me bossy. They said, you're doing too much. They said your big emotions are too messy for me. It wasn't
yeah,
until I sort of got into college and had some of those key people in my life that just said like, hey, you're doing some cool things. Like the things that, other people maybe saw as deficits, I see how they can be a strength in this environment. And that was, yeah, those game changing moments for me.
that's funny. I very similar to you. When I was growing up, I ended up having a left my mom's house, had a
Hmm.
5 bedroom house, and moved in on my friends. And they will
Hmm.
all say, "You act like you somebody's dad," but it was just that like that leader in me, right? Like I just want to
Right?
make sure everybody is okay. You
Right.
do the right things, don't do the
Yeah.
wrong things.
Right.
And we don't even realize it. That's
Yeah.
just in us. And it
Yeah.
is, as you mentioned, some of the struggles that we've kind of endured growing up,
Hmm.
and thankful for because I was, said that I talk a lot.
Hmm.
But thank God, that I use my voice because here we are having
Right.
these conversations.
Absolutely.
I remember one time this leader told me, he says, Ephraim, I can't work for you. He says, but because he was 50 and I was like 19, 20 years old. He's like, but I know with a good team, man, you're gonna do some amazing things. And it's like at
Yeah.
that moment, I didn't know what he was talking about, but
Mm-hmm.
it's like, man, when you can lead group of individuals that
Hmm.
understand the same mission you understand, you're a force
Hmm.
to be reckoned with. And Molly, I can imagine that you're a force to be reckoned with because you're out here leading individuals to think better, to do better,
Hmm.
and you're working at the higher ed. What are some of the things that you feel you've brought to the table? Because higher ed also one of those that kind of a little stagnant at
Yeah.
times, but we have
Absolutely.
some new technology,
Hmm.
AI being one of them that I feel everyone's trying to get into, but also
Yeah.
kind of some fear around that. But what
Right.
are some of the things that you bring to the table to the higher ed space?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that. So actually, I think in so many ways, because college was one of the first spaces where I felt seen and that people valued my strengths, I stayed. I never, I never finished of working in university. So I've worked at 5 or 6 institutions now, moving, transitioning
Wow.
different positions. And I think a lot of that transition and moving up into a new position came from me being like, well, if we did it this way, it actually aligns with the students and the system that they're experiencing. I often describe it to people as like students are kind of on a highway. They might get off on an exit to do a rest stop, but they're not like going to get off and go, down the block and around the corner to find something, right? They want us to bring things to them. That is their experience, especially now. I think that was true of my generation, but now, so many things are at their fingertips. They are expecting and looking for us to do that for them as well. And they have a lot more choice, right? I love that higher education has opened doors in a lot of ways to access for a lot of students. And I've always worked at access oriented institutions, meaning that they're low cost, they're thoughtful about the cost to students. I guess I shouldn't say low cost. They're thoughtful about the cost to students. They're still expensive as higher ed is. But yes, I come into these 100-year-old institutions and am excited about the fact that they cater to students like me, first gen, low income. And then I get there and realize like there's some level of our old school styles, right? And so I come in and
Mm.
start to ask questions and be curious about the why and what's the challenge. And are we recognizing that if we made this student centered, if we thought about how this impacted the students, that could be a game changer for them and for us. I think so. Yeah. So that is one of the ways that I think that I've positively impacted higher ed here at the institution I'm at, bringing on some key technologies. It's so easy to technology stack, like get app after app or thing after thing, but really thinking about what is going to make the difference for students. We're grappling with AI. Like you said, higher education is slow to change and AI is moving us and we're
Yeah.
struggling with that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so really trying to understand and engage with what tools are out there, what students want, and the ways that we can help them. And really, it's about systematically figuring out who's struggling, when they're like here, not when they're here and like kind of already ready to leave. Like we're trying to find
Yeah.
out who's in those high red zones and struggling and maybe not feeling a sense of belonging really early on.
Yeah, kind of meeting them at where they're at, right?
Mm-hmm.
That being able to communicate with them, as you mentioned, at all levels, I would
Right.
say, when they first get
Right.
into, when they're going through something, whether
Absolutely.
now they're in grad school. Do we have anything like that that really communicates to them at all levels?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. It's something we're spending a lot of time on right now is thinking, I mean, they start deciding if they belong in college when they're being recruited. It does not, they don't wait until they show up to decide, they've already started building or decreasing their confidence level. Think back to my story, the college that lost my application, I could have reapplied and they could have accepted me, but I would have already had a kind of a bad taste in my mouth, right? So
Yeah.
students are constantly sort of sitting with, am I going to belong here? Is this the school for me? Is this the place where I feel confident? So yes, we have to, that's one of the highway aspects, right? It's not about a moment in time. It's about from the time that they're thinking about school all the way through, right? Those key decision points where
Yep.
I just am working with a team right now about first year student experience and how we can help them build out a strong experience aligned with what the students already want to do and are already concerned about, like that just in time thing, all the way through sophomore year, junior year. How are we preparing them for that? Not necessarily even the job right after they graduate college, but the job that's going to be out there, the career that they're going to have in 10 or 20 years. And we know those change over time. So those critical thinking skills, that larger knowledge, and how do we use technology to do that and help them and again meet them where they are. So those are some of the central things that I'm putting on our strategy team table and really asking people to put their brains together about.
Love it. And with so many leaders right now that are in the higher ed, nonprofits, and healthcare, they're scared. Funding is kind
Mm-hmm.
of being cut.
Yeah.
Programs are disappearing. So for a
Right.
leader who hasn't built that infrastructure that they've want or the systems, where do they even start?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. I do think it actually starts a lot with culture. Like, are people willing to come to the table? I just started at the
Mhm.
institution I'm at about a year and a half ago, and people quickly said two things that kind of raised my flag. One, silos are a real problem. And so it was nice that they were able to identify it, and that we have an oral history. So all of our processes and procedures are oral. And I'm like, that is a concern, right? So those are two challenges. So I jumped right into there was at least, if they were willing to name that there was silos and challenges with that, then that tells me that there was some openness to address and talk about how to do it. So quickly building relationships. Sometimes collaboration is actually about how do people get out of my way so I can do what I want. Some people, when they say collaboration, that's what they really mean. But for me, it's how do we get on the same page about what are the key things we need to do? What are the non-negotiables? Like this has to happen. And what are the things that, we can really understand differently from each other? So, as I mentioned, the thing that I often do with organizations, because they don't have this plan ready, they don't necessarily know how to build it. So they're looking for some support in that, is I start by asking everybody, talking to culture interviews, really understanding. And that slowdown and taking a beat is probably where people struggle the most because things are moving fast paced. It's hard to find that time. So I help people find that time. And then I dig into recognizing and mapping that system and those patterns, and then developing a system where they're able to talk about what are the non-negotiables. We have to do this. This is so important to us. This can't change. What are the negotiables? What can people come to the table, people from your team come to the table with expertise on, and help them feel seen and valued? Because if we don't build out a system that a student-centered system that values our team members and our employees, then we've lost another key step in this process. So really taking time to make space for those experts. Similarly to me as a student, I want to be seen for my unique gifts and my strengths. So do our employees, and we have to create space for that, and recognize that they all have their own kind of things they're bringing to the table.
As just telling me all this, I'm like, I got a better question here. Like, you got four kids under 10,
Yeah,
you're running a university
yeah,
and a consulting LLC. Like, how do you build systems around yourself, so that you can actually show up without losing
yeah.
yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually funny. It's the same. I have a framework I use when I'm working with an organization or an individual or myself. I literally sat down this morning and was like, okay, what patterns have worked for me? What patterns do I know
Mhm.
are working? So I meditate and do yoga every morning. I have since 2020.
Okay.
The pandemic broke us all a little bit, right? And so
Wow.
I was like, I got to figure out a way to pour back into myself, reset myself every day in this stress. And I have kept that habit strong. So knowing that, okay, what's a habit? That's a pattern I can repeat. What's a different pattern I can repeat, and a habit? So understanding repeatable patterns, understanding what's not working. I doom scroll at night. It gets to 10 p.m. and I'm like, I should go to bed. I want to get up early and prep for my podcast interview. And yeah, no, I don't. I doom scroll and then I'm regretting it the next morning, feeling that burn. So now, yeah, I wrote myself a plan, and I like to think about these things as we're playing with them. I'm going to try this.
Yeah.
I'm going to set up a reward system. If it works, I'm going to do it again. I do the same thing with my kids, right? Like they're
Love it.
struggling. So what's the reward? What's the thing we're going to try, the pattern we think we can be repeating, and then what's the reward for that pattern?
I love it. No, definitely. You got to find those things that work for you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what do you think being a mom taught you about leadership that really no institution probably could?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do think one of the most important things as you're developing as a leader, I loved our kind of earlier conversation where we talked about moments we started to realize we were a leader and that the things that maybe other people had given us a hard time about were actually skills and strengths.
Mhm.
So I love that conversation. I think that that's a very big, important first step in leadership to start to see yourself that way. I think the next step is developing emotional intelligence and understanding who you are and what triggers you. Because we all have
Yeah.
stuff, right? I have a lot of stuff because I came up in a pretty tumultuous household, but everybody has stuff. Everybody has things that trigger them, that get in their way, that bother them. And understanding that is hugely central to developing as a leader. And because your employees are going to trigger you, your employees are going to do something, your team's going to do something, your customers are going to do something that really bothers you almost nonsensically, like almost in a way that doesn't make sense to anyone else because it's triggering something that happened to you before, right? It's not necessarily happening in the moment. And unless you understand those things and get ahead of them or create systems around them, then you end up repeating those patterns with these new people, the new employees, the new customers, and that can become a real problem. And I've seen it in a lot of leaders. So I would say the thing that my kids have taught me more than I think most, that you might get at work is they teach you what triggers you. They like are little emotion scientists. They're just watching for me to get upset. And then they're like, let me repeat that. Let me just push that
Yeah.
button whenever I want your attention, whenever you're doing whatever you need to do. And I need you, I'm going to push this button and that's it. And so then, yeah,
That's so funny.
I felt the need to really learn about how to navigate that. And that learning then really helped me as a leader.
That's so good. Yeah, kids definitely test your patience.
Oh, yeah.
Listen, I always say the thing that I learn most is patience, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
to what you say, I used to be the person that went 0 to 100 and then know how to not go from here to here.
Yeah.
And I've had to learn that very early on, and it's just sometimes just walking away, you
Yeah.
know. And I remember when I first got into my relationship with my now wife, I've had to learn that when I
Hmm.
was mad, I had to walk away, and she thought it was okay for me to just stay there, and I'm like, no, I just have to go,
Hmm.
because that's I didn't realize there was anger issues either,
Right.
and it
Yeah.
was me becoming. I remember one time she says, "When you get so upset, I don't even know who you are."
Hmm.
Right, and that was
Hmm.
that moment. I'm like, wait a minute, like, what do you mean?
Hmm.
Like I wasn't okay with that. I wasn't okay with someone telling me that.
Right.
Realize, because no one really called that out, but
Right.
it is. Our kids will call it out. Our spouses will call it
Yeah.
out, and it is one of those things that we should
Yeah.
definitely. And it's like you can't get away from the triggers.
Mm-mm.
Triggers could be a smell. Triggers could be a thing. Somebody
Hmm.
did something to you. A moment that whatever just pops in your head.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes I battle that as well. I'm like, oh my God, like I just wish I can. I don't think this anymore. But that's just
Yeah.
life that we live, and I'm happy that you were able to continue to work with systems and pour that back into your kids. Because it's not about us. It's
Mm-mm.
about the next generation of individuals. So.
Absolutely.
Um, it's been a good conversation. It's
Yeah.
been a good conversation. For those nonprofit directors, the higher
Hmm.
ed VPs, and
Hmm.
those in the healthcare listening right now, who may be overwhelmed and doesn't know where to start, what is the
Hmm.
one thing you want them to hear today?
Yeah. I think when I really am working with an individual, the thing I say is you got to create some time for yourself. And I know I often say my calendar, my to-do list, and the work I have to do is fighting each other, right? So like
Mhm.
I want to work on, oh, my email, that's the other thing. My calendar, my to-do list, and my email are fighting each other, and who gets my attention every day, right? So it's so easy to get caught up in all the meetings and all the things. It's so easy to get caught up in so much that we have to do, especially as a high achiever. You're like, I want to show everybody that I'm proving my worth and doing the things I said I would do.
Mhm.
None of that will be sustainable if you don't take some time and create space for yourself. For me, it's the yoga and meditation every day, but then I have a weekly reflection I do. The thing I think I'm going to try to add, we'll see if it works, is a daily kind of brain dump. Because that's one of the things for me when I doom scroll. It's because I have so many unfinished things from throughout the day. But yeah, we got to create time and space for ourselves to do some of this work.
Yeah.
All of this comes up. Like if you take some space, if you really start to think about things, a lot of this can come up. If you're more of an avoidant person, if you know that you're not someone who's going to do that for yourself, get a coach, get a support person, like get a friend who's going through some of the same stuff.
Mhm.
I've had all three they at different points depending on the scenario, and all three are helpful. But yeah, like then it's having that person kind of encourage you to think through some of the challenges. Yeah, so I would suggest that the first step is starting to really see what's going on for you, see the patterns that are causing you challenges, and then, yeah, asking for help from a professional or a support person to navigate some of those things.
Accountability partners always work out. That's
Yeah,
why friends do not like to tell me anything because I am that guy. If you tell me something, I will make sure that I'm gonna call you and hold you accountable. Like
absolutely.
I have friends
Absolutely.
that would not pick up their phones because they know I'm calling.
Yeah.
Sir, are you
Yeah.
doing work or
Yeah.
what are you doing, ma'am? No, I definitely appreciate it. I appreciate the conversation. And where can people find more information about the work that you're doing?
Yeah.
LinkedIn, is there a URL? Socials?
Yeah, LinkedIn, Mollie Rockafellow, and my email or my website is rock-red at or rock-red .com. So, just
Yeah,
basic
I
kind of. So my company is called Rock Red LLC, which is my maiden name and my married name kind of mixed together. It's a family affair for sure for us trying to try new things and be creative with our time and energy. So yeah, that's probably the easiest way to check out what I'm doing. And then yeah, putting a lot out there through social media and LinkedIn.
Well, Molly, I appreciate you. For those that are still watching, make sure that you guys do like, subscribe, and comment. These are the
Hmm.
conversations we continue to have with other leaders in the spaces so that you can feel a bit more comfortable in the work that you do every single day. It is definitely passion work, it is purpose work. It is not about a paycheck, as I always say.
Hmm.
And I thank you for giving your time and your insight today, Miss Molly. Continue to do some amazing work. I'm Efrain. This is Molly. We'll catch you guys on the next one. Latest.